She was a sorceress, descended from gods, capable of miracles that defied the imagination and horrors that haunted nightmares. But when the hero she loved betrayed her, Medea turned all of that power into a terrifying and calculated revenge that became a legend all its own. This is the story of how love, betrayal, and vengeance created one of the most feared and fascinating women in all of Greek mythology. She's a walking contradiction, a healer who deals in death, a loving mother who becomes a child killer, a betrayed wife who orchestrates a symphony of ruin. Her name is Medea, and her story forces us to stare into the abyss of human passion and ask, what happens when the brightest love gets twisted into the darkest hate? To understand her, we have to travel to the edge of the known world, to a kingdom of ancient power and dark magic, and witness the birth of a legend written in blood and fire. Part 1. The Princess of Colchis. At the furthest edge of the Greek world, where the Black Sea meets the Caucasus Mountains, lay the kingdom of Colchis to the Greeks. This was a mythical land of immense wealth, ancient secrets, and untamed, barbarian power. Ruling over it was King Ates, who possessed a treasure of unimaginable value, the Golden Fleece. But the king had another treasure, one far more powerful and unpredictable, his daughter Medea. Medea was no ordinary princess. Her lineage flowed directly from the gods. Her father was the son of Helios, the mighty titan who drove the sun's chariot across the sky. This divine blood sang in Medea's veins, giving her a deep connection to the primal forces of the world. Her aunt was Circe, the infamous enchantress who could turn men into pigs with a wave of her hand. From this formidable family, Medea inherited a legacy of magic, a deep understanding of the world that went far beyond mortal limits. From a young age, Medea was not just a princess but a devotee of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, ghosts, and crossroads. In the shadowed groves, sacred to her goddess, Medea learned her craft. She mastered the secret properties of roots and herbs, the art of the use of drugs and potions. She could brew potions that brought on a sleep like death, create salves that made skin impervious to fire, and mix poisons so potent they could dissolve life in an instant. Her power had two faces. She could heal and restore, but she could also corrupt and destroy. She was a vessel of immense untamed power, a woman who understood the delicate balance between life and death, because she held both in her hands. Growing up in the isolation of Colchis, she was a figure of both awe and fear, a princess whose knowledge of the arcane arts set her apart. She was a woman of immense potential, just waiting for a catalyst to unleash the full, terrifying scope of her abilities upon the world. And that catalyst was sailing towards her on a 50-yard ship named the Argo. Part 2. The arrival of the hero. The arrival of Jason and the Argonauts in Colchis was an event that changed everything. Jason, the dethroned heir of Iolcus, had been sent on an impossible quest by his usurping uncle Peleus. Bring back the Golden Fleece. It was a mission designed to kill him. Peleus knew the fleece was guarded by unspeakable dangers and never expected to see his nephew again. When the handsome, bold Jason stood before King Ates and stated his purpose, the king pretended to agree, but inside he was seething. He wasn't about to give up his kingdom's greatest treasure to some foreign upstart. So, he devised a series of trials, each deadlier than the last, all designed to utterly destroy the hero. First, Jason had to yoke to Colchatory colossal bulls with bronze hooves and fiery breath and plow a field with them. Then, he had to sow that field with dragon's teeth. From those teeth, an army of fully armed stone warriors, the Spartoi, would spring from the earth, ready to kill whoever planted them. And if, by some miracle, he survived all that, he would have to face the fleece's final guardian, a massive sleepless serpent that coiled around a sacred oak tree, its venomous fangs always dripping. These were not tasks for a mortal man, no matter how brave. Jason's quest was doomed from the start, but he had a secret weapon on Mount Olympus. The goddess Hera, who hated King Peleus, had guided Jason's journey. She knew the only way he could succeed was with the help of the power that resided inside the palace itself. Conspiring with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Hera sent Eros to shoot one of his golden arrows. Not at Jason, but straight into the heart of the sorceress princess, Medea. The moment Medea saw Jason, the arrow struck. It was a love that wasn't grown, but inflicted a supernatural passion that overrode every other loyalty. Suddenly, her duty to her father and her kingdom meant nothing next to the burning, all-consuming need to help this beautiful stranger. She was caught in a divine trap, her immense power now tied to the fate of a man she'd just met. That night, Medea secretly met with Jason. Seeing the despair in his eyes, she knew he would fail without her. In exchange for a sacred oath of marriage, he promised to take her to Greece and make her his wife forever. She gave him the keys to his survival. She handed him a magical ointment that would make his skin and weapons impervious to fire and iron for one day. And she told him the secret of the Spartoi if he threw a stone into their midst. Their mindless aggression would turn on each other, and they would fight until none were left. Hopeful again, Jason readily swore the oath. The next day, anointed with Medea's magic, he strode into the field. The fire-breathing bulls charged, but their flames washed over his protected skin harmlessly. He wrestled the beasts, yoked them to the plow, and carved furrows in the earth. He sowed the dragon's teeth, and just as Medea predicted, the ground broke open as the stone warriors clawed their way into the light. Before they could attack, Jason hurled a rock into their ranks. Confused, the Spartoi turned on one another in a chaotic self-destructive frenzy until only rubble remained. Jason had won, but King Ates wasn't about to honor his word. He secretly planned to burn the Argo and slaughter its crew that night. Medea, her heart torn, knew she had to act decisively. Her betrayal had to be absolute. She led Jason to the sacred grove where the golden fleece hung, shimmering. The great serpent hissed, ready to strike. But Medea began to chant in a low ancient tongue, sprinkling potent sleeping herbs into the air. The monster's unblinking eyes grew heavy, and for the first time in centuries, the guardian of the fleece fell into a magical slumber. Jason seized the fleece, and together they ran to the Argo, ready to flee Chalcis forever. Medea had made her choice. She had chosen Jason, and in doing so, she had declared war on her own family. Part 3, A Trail of Blood. The escape from Chalcis was a desperate flight in the dark. As the Argo cut through the Black Sea, Medea knew her furious father would be in hot pursuit with his fleet. They couldn't outrun him. They needed a delay, one so horrific it would stop even a vengeful king in his tracks to ensure their escape. Medea had brought her younger brother Upsidas aboard the Argo. As Ates's ships gained on them, Medea orchestrated an act that would seal her reputation for ruthlessness. Her brother was killed, but his death wasn't enough. To truly stop her father's pursuit, she did the unspeakable. She dismembered his body and cast the pieces into the sea, one by one. This gruesome act was a masterpiece of cruel strategy. Ates, seeing the floating remains of his son, was forced to abandon the chase to gather every piece of his heir's body for a proper burial. Medea had weaponized her father's grief to secure her escape. The Argonauts who witnessed this now looked at her with a new kind of fear. This wasn't just a lovesick princess. This was a woman who would tear apart her own family to get what she wanted. Their journey back to Greece was filled with danger, but Medea's power was their shield. On the island of Crete, they were confronted by Talos, the giant man of bronze who guarded the shore. Talos hurled massive rocks at their ship, and the Argonauts were helpless. But Medea wasn't. She saw the single vein that ran the length of his body, sealed by a bronze nail in his ankle. Fixing her gaze on the giant, she called upon the spirits of death, casting a spell of confusion. In some tellings, she tricked him into removing the nail himself. In others, she simply bewitched him so he stumbled and cut his ankle on a sharp rock. The divine fluid that gave him life gushed out like molten metal, and the great bronze giant crashed lifelessly to the ground. Finally, they arrived back in Iolcus, golden fleece in hand. But Jason's uncle, Peleus, refused to give up the throne. Jason, a hero in battle but a novice at treachery, was powerless. So he turned to Medea, still fiercely dedicated to his cause. She devised a plan of exquisite cruelty. She presented herself to the court as a miracle worker. To demonstrate her power, she took an old ram, cut it into pieces, and boiled the parts in a cauldron with magical herbs. Before the astonished eyes of Peleus' daughters, a young, vibrant lamb leaped from the pot. Medea then offered this same gift of youth to their aging father. Blinded by hope, the daughters agreed. That night, they followed Medea's instructions, drugging their father and cutting him into pieces for the cauldron. They waited for the miracle, but Medea had of course forgotten to add the necessary herbs. The daughters watched in horror as their father was reduced to a stew. They had become his murderers. Peleus was dead, and Medea's hands were technically clean. But this clever murder backfired. The people of Iolcus, horrified, drove Jason and Medea into exile. They had their revenge, but they were homeless, their names stained by dark magic. They found refuge in the city of Corinth, hoping to finally start the life Jason had promised. For a time, it seemed they might find peace, but the seeds of bloodshed they had sown would soon bear bitter fruit. Part 4. The Betrayal in Corinth. For 10 years, Corinth was a sanctuary. Jason and Medea built a life, raised 2 sons, and it seemed that Medea's sacrifices had finally been worth it. She had given up everything: her family, her home, her innocence for her husband and children. The sacred oath Jason had sworn to her seemed secure, but it was all an illusion. Jason's ambition was a restless snake. Jason, the celebrated hero, was still just an exile with no kingdom or real power. He began to see his wife, the foreign sorceress with a dark past, not as his savior, but as an obstacle. Then an opportunity arose, one too good for him to ignore. Creon, the king of Corinth, offered Jason his young daughter, Glauce, in marriage. This was a political alliance. By marrying the princess, Jason would secure a place in a royal family and a powerful inheritance for his children. It was a chance to finally get the status he craved. The only cost was Medea. It was a price Jason was willing to pay. He decided to divorce Medea and marry Glauce. To him, this was a logical, pragmatic move. He argued he was doing it for the good of the family. He failed to understand that for Medea, this wasn't politics. It was the ultimate betrayal. It was the shattering of the sacred oath for which she had committed treason and murder. The news fell on Medea like a death sentence. She wasn't just being replaced, she was being erased. As a foreign woman in a Greek city, her only protection came from her husband. Without him, she was a stateless outcast. The love that had driven her to monstrous acts curdled into an equally monstrous hate. To make matters worse, King Creon, fearing the wrath of a spurned sorceress, banished her. She and her children were to be exiled from Corinth immediately. With her world collapsing, Medea pleaded with Creon not to stay, but for a single day's reprieve. Just one day, Creon, pitying her children, made a fatal mistake. He agreed. He had given a brilliant and ruthless sorceress 24 hours to orchestrate his doom. Jason then came to see her, not with remorse, but with condescending excuses. He told her she had only herself to blame and offered her money for her banishment. This was the final insult, trying to buy her off with a handful of coins after she had sacrificed everything. She spat his words back at him, reminding him of every betrayal she had committed for his sake. She had been his tool, and now he was casting her aside. Their argument was a chasm of misunderstanding. Jason used cool, self-serving logic, while Medea spoke the language of betrayed passion. She refused his help. She wanted justice, and since the laws of men wouldn't give it to her, she would get it herself. Her plan began to form when she had a chance encounter with Aegeus, the king of Athens. He was old and childless, and Medea offered him her skills to solve his infertility. In return, she asked only for sanctuary in his city. Aegeus, desperate for an heir, swore an oath to protect her. Medea now had her escape plan. The stage was set. Her mind, a brilliant and terrifying instrument, began to weave a tapestry of death. She wouldn't just punish Jason, she would annihilate his entire world. Part 5. A Mother's Revenge. With her escape route secured, Medea's grief crystallized into a cold, calculated plan. She would not slip away into exile. She would leave Corinth a monument to Jason's betrayal, written in fire and blood. Her revenge would be designed to inflict the maximum possible suffering on the man who had destroyed her life. She feigned reconciliation, summoning Jason and with chilling self-control, apologizing. She played the part of the woman who had seen reason. Jason, smug and self-satisfied, was completely fooled. Medea then asked that their sons be allowed to remain in Corinth and, as a token of peace, that they be the ones to deliver a gift to the new bride. Gloss, a beautiful finely woven robe, and a golden coronet, heirlooms from her grandfather, the sun god Helios. In her sanctum, Medea laced the gifts with a magical, all-consuming poison, one that would activate with body heat a fire that water could not quench. Her innocent sons, unaware of the role they were playing, were led to the palace. As Medea predicted, Gloss's vanity won out. She joyfully put on the robe and the crown. For a moment, she admired herself. Then, the horror began. A messenger later recounted the scene to Medea, his face pale with terror. The princess's skin began to change color. She foamed at the mouth, her eyes rolling back. The golden coronet ignited, and an unnatural, devouring fire consumed her hair and scalp. The poisoned robe ate away at her flesh like acid. She ran through the palace, a living torch, until she collapsed and died in a smoldering, unrecognizable heap. Her father, King Creon, rushed to her side and embraced his daughter's body. In doing so, he became entangled in the poisoned robe. The same fire enveloped him. He tried to pull away, but the poison had glued him to his daughter's corpse, tearing the flesh from his bones. Father and daughter died together in a gruesome, fiery embrace. Jason's new life was destroyed. But Medea's revenge wasn't complete. The final, most devastating blow was yet to come. To truly ruin Jason, to leave him with nothing, she had to erase his legacy. She had to kill their children. This was the act that would forever define her. Yet Euripides' play gives her a heart-wrenching monologue, a moment of profound internal conflict. She looks at her sons, her love for them at war with her need for revenge. She weeps at the thought of what she is about to do, but her resolve hardens, fueled by the memory of Jason's betrayal. Her twisted logic claimed it was a mercy better they die by her hand than be killed by their enemies. But her primary motive was clear, to inflict a wound on Jason from which he could never, ever recover. Her warrior-like determination won. As the chorus listened in horror, the screams of the children were heard from inside the house. Jason, having just learned of his bride's death, rushed to the scene, but the doors were barred, and then Medea appeared above him, not on the ground, but in a golden chariot drawn by winged dragons, a gift from her grandfather Helios. In her arms she held the lifeless bodies of their sons. She was no longer a mortal woman. She had become a figure of divine retribution, untouchable and terrifying. She looked down at the broken man below her and mocked his pain. She refused him even the comfort of bearing his children and cursed him to an ignoble end, to be killed one day by a rotting piece of his own ship, the Argo. And with that, her dragon chariot lifted into the sky, carrying her away from Corinth, leaving Jason screaming his rage at an empty sky. Medea's revenge was complete. Part 6. The Legacy of a Sorceress. Medea's dramatic escape from Corinth wasn't an end, but a transformation. She ascended from human tragedy into permanent myth, beyond the reach of mortal law. Her journey continued, leaving a trail of power and chaos across the Greek world. She found her promised sanctuary in Athens, where she married King Aegeus. She kept her promise, bearing him a son named Medea. For a time she was a queen, but her peace was shattered by the arrival of another hero, Theseus, Aegeus's long-lost son, who came to claim his birthright. Seeing Theseus as a threat to her own son's inheritance, Medea's old instincts took over. She plotted to poison him, but at the last moment Aegeus recognized his son and knocked the poisoned cup from his hand, exposing her treachery. Forced to flee once more, Medea vanished from Athens. Some accounts say she returned to Carchis and killed her usurping uncle, restoring her father to the throne. Other legends claim she traveled east, where her son Medea became the ancestor of the people known as the Medes. In one of the stranger postscripts to her story, some later traditions say she was granted immortality and went to the Elysian fields, where she married Achilles, the greatest of all Greek warriors. But Medea's truest legacy is the enduring power of her story. She has fascinated and horrified people for millennia. She raises a profound question. Is she a monster, a woman who murders her family for selfish reasons? Or is she a tragic victim, driven to madness by betrayal in a society that gave her no power and cast her out? Her story has even echoed into modern psychology, inspiring the term Medea complex to describe a parent who harms their own child to get revenge on a spouse. But she's also seen as a symbol of feminist Raja woman who refuses to be a passive victim, and who seizes agency in the most brutal way imaginable. Medea challenges us because she isn't simple. She is a sorceress of divine lineage, a helper maiden who gives everything for love, and a destroyer who takes everything in hate. She remains one of the most complex, compelling, and truly dangerous figures in all of mythology, a testament to the idea that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, especially when that woman has the power of the gods at her fingertips. What do you think? Was Medea a monster, a victim, or something else entirely? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to explore more of the darkest and most fascinating corners of mythology, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories. Medea's story is a chilling journey into the heart of darkness. It explores the terrifying speed at which love can curdle into hate, and how the pain of betrayal can unmake a world. She remains a powerful and unsettling figure because she reflects the outer limits of human emotion. Her tale is a brutal reminder that justice and revenge are often two sides of the same blood-soaked coin, and that the line between a hero's savior and his destroyer can be erased in a single, unforgivable act. The myth of Medea endures not just as a story, but as a timeless and terrifying question about the price of passion and the depths of vengeance.